Welcome to Lesson 11, Part 8. We are going to talk about asset allocation. In the previous video, we introduced the risk-return plane that is meant to plot the portfolio standard deviation on the y-axis and the portfolio return on the x-axis, both reported as annual figures. Here we compare the MASASP system combination, the blue plot, with a portfolio having a buy and hold position on the Standard & Poor, the red plot, which should be referred to as the benchmark, abbreviated as BMK. The MASASP system combination stands in a place within the risk-return plane where the standard deviation is smaller, then the risk is lower and the return is higher with respect to the benchmark. This property of the MASASP combination is termed as dominance, and such combination is said to be dominant with respect to the benchmark. Now it comes to the question of the asset allocation in compliance with the modern portfolio theory, abbreviated as MPT. The question is it worth to blend the two systems, meaning the MASASP system combination and the buy and hold position on the benchmark? Someone might conclude, based on the previous slide, that it is right and proper to pick up just the MASASP combination and to discard completely the benchmark on the ground of the fact that the latter is dominated. Well, that conclusion is untrue. In order to assess that, we plot a curve of all the possible portfolios obtained blending the MASASP and the benchmark. Each of these possible portfolios, represented by a dot on the blue curve, is characterized by two allocation factors, also termed weights. At the beginning of this curve, on the left side, we have the portfolio characterized by all funds allocated on the benchmark, whereas at the opposite end, on the right side, we have the portfolio characterized by all funds allocated on the MASASP system combination, which dominates the benchmark. Well, we can spot one feasible portfolio at the middle of the blue curve, and this feasible portfolio is characterized by the least possible risk, which corresponds to the bottom peak of said curve. This portfolio is optimal in terms of risk-return trade-off, as its Sharpe ratio is higher than that of either the MASASP system combination or the benchmark taken separately. We have stuck so far to the basic asset allocation assumption, also termed as budget-constrained asset allocation. The budget constraint requires that the sum of the allocation factors be equal 100% of our funds, meaning that we can't invest more than our funds. This budget constraint, luckily enough, can be overcome, because the MASASP system is implemented with either futures contracts or CFDs that in turn make possible to invest more than our available funds, resulting to the so-called underfunding covered in Lesson 9. Let's recap what we found out in Lesson 9, looking at the funding level assessment chart. We see in this chart that the MASASP system combination can be operated providing funds for just the 30% of the face value of the positions held by the systems. More specifically, all the funding levels higher than 30% are feasible. The MASASP asset allocation scorecard, by default, when the budget constraint is overcome, assumes that the MASASP combination is operated with a 50% underfunding, meaning providing funds for just 50% of the face value of the positions held by the MASASP systems. The remaining 50% of our funds can be allocated on the benchmark, then on the SPY ETF. As a result, we have forged a system that might hold position for 150% of our funds, involving higher profits. Let's assess that in the next slide. Here, we come back to our risk-return plane, where the blue plot, already discussed, the budget-constrained allocation plot, is complemented by a cyan plot related to the margin requirement constrained allocation, which in turn is characterized by the 50% underfunding scheme presented in the previous slide. The optimal portfolio compliant with the margin requirement constraint assumption is the one located at the end of the cyan curve on the right side. This portfolio has a Sharpe ratio of 1.32, which is even better than that resulting from the budget-constrained allocation. Besides, it delivers a higher return, 20.5% instead of 14%. A specific beta scorecard is delivered, which refers to this portfolio obtained by blending the MASASP combination and the Standard & Poor's ETF. We can see here that this portfolio systematically overperforms the benchmark. Let's mark with a green circle all years where said portfolio has a performance approximately equal or bigger than that of the Standard & Poor's. That happens 11 times out of 12 across a 12-year observation period. Last but not least, even though this portfolio contains the benchmark, its correlation with the benchmark is low. In fact, its beta reads 0.35. We will have a thorough look at this portfolio in the next video, which will deal with the key information document. That's all for the time being. Thanks for watching, and see you at Lesson 11, Part B.